The kingdom stretched across shadows and moonlight, a realm where time moved differently, and forever wasn't merely a promise, it was a condition of existence. King Theron Nightshade had ruled the eastern vampire territories for 4 centuries, governing with the steady detachment of someone who'd seen empires rise and crumble into dust. He'd learned early that immortality demanded a certain emotional distance. To care too deeply was to guarantee heartbreak, for everything mortal withered eventually. But his sister had never learned that lesson. Isabel burst into his study at precisely 11:47 p.m., her enthusiasm filling the vast room like champagne bubbles. She carried her laptop like a sacred text, screen glowing with the familiar interface of yet another cooking show. "You have to smell this one," she announced, dropping into the leather chair across from his desk with the casual authority of someone who'd been his sister for over 300 years. "Chef Marcus is making beef bourguignon. Tell me everything." Theron set down the territorial dispute report he'd been reviewing, something about a disagreement over hunting rights in the Carpathian region, and accepted the laptop. On screen, a bearded man in a white apron stirred an enormous pot, steam rising in aromatic clouds. Theron inhaled carefully, filtering through the electronic barrier to catch the scent memory embedded in the video. Red wine, beef stock, pearl onions, thyme, bay leaf, and, he paused considering, a touch of tomato paste for depth. Isabel leaned forward, her dark eyes bright with vicarious pleasure. "And the meat?" "Tender, it's been braising for hours." He watched the chef taste the sauce, saw the man's face transform with satisfaction, and felt a strange pang. Not hunger, vampires didn't experience that for human food, but something adjacent to nostalgia. "He's pleased with it." "I would be too." Isabel sighed, accepting the laptop back. "Do you remember food? Real memories, not just the facts." Theron considered. He'd been turned in 1178, a lifetime ago when he'd been a lord's son with a talent for diplomacy and a fatal tendency toward mercy. "Sometimes. Bread, mostly. My mother's honey cakes. The taste of apples in autumn." He smiled faintly. "Why this obsession with cooking shows?" "Because it's creative and alive and temporary." Isabel's voice carried that particular intensity she got when trying to articulate something important. "They make something beautiful knowing it will be consumed and gone. That's very human, don't you think?" "Very brave." Before Theron could respond, Isabel's phone chimed. She glanced at it, then stood with supernatural swiftness. "That's my order. Spring rolls and pad thai. I'm having the delivery person leave it in the kitchen. You'll describe it for me, won't you?" "You know I will." She kissed his forehead on her way past, affection as casual as breathing. "You're the best brother a girl could ask for, even if you are impossibly stuffy about council politics. Someone has to maintain diplomatic relations with the European territories. And someone has to maintain relations with human culture," she called back, already halfway down the corridor. "We can't all hide in castles reading century-old grievance reports." Theron returned to his documents, but his concentration had fractured. Through the mansion's many rooms, he could hear Isabel greeting the delivery driver with her characteristic warmth, over-tipping as always, thanking them profusely. She would spend the next hour making him describe every component of her meal, asking about textures and temperatures and flavor combinations she could only experience through his words. It was a strange ritual, this vicarious tasting, but after 400 years together, he'd learned that love manifested in unexpected shapes. If describing pad thai made his sister happy, he would describe it with the same attention he brought to peace negotiations. The food arrived. Isabel spread the containers across the kitchen island with the reverence usually reserved for archaeological discoveries. "Start with the spring rolls," she instructed. "I want to know everything." Theron leaned close to the first container, breathing in the complex aromatics. Rice paper wrapper, crispy from frying. Inside there's shrimp, rice vermicelli, herbs, mint and cilantro, and julienne vegetables. The sauce is sweet and tangy, fish sauce base with lime, sugar, and chili. Isabel closed her eyes, imagining. Temperature? Still hot, the oil is fresh. She smiled, satisfied. Perfect. Now the pad thai. They continued this way, Isabel asking questions, Theron providing answers, until every dish had been catalogued and described. It was nearly 1 a.m. when she finally boxed up the untouched food for donation. There were several shelters in the city who'd learned not to question the nightly deliveries of pristine takeout from the mysterious benefactor. I'm leaving tomorrow, Isabel announced, carrying containers to the industrial refrigerator. The council summit in Prague. 3 weeks of arguing about territorial boundaries and feeding ethics. Absolutely thrilling. Theron looked up from rinsing his hands. 3 weeks? Don't sound so devastated. You'll barely notice I'm gone. She grinned. Though you might miss describing Thai food at 2 a.m. I'll manage somehow. I'm sure you will. Just try not to resolve all the world's vampire politics while I'm away. Leave some diplomatic crises for when I return. I do enjoy your exasperated faces during council video calls. The next evening, Isabel departed in a hired car to the airport, leaving the mansion feeling larger and quieter than Theron remembered. He tried to settle into his usual routines, paperwork, calls with regional representatives, reading reports on population movements and feeding pattern shifts. But the silence felt heavier without Isabel's intermittent interruptions. He was deep in a particularly tedious analysis of blood bank sustainability practices when the doorbell rang at precisely 2:03 a.m. Theron frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone, and visitors at this hour were unusual even for a vampire household. Through the door's security camera, he saw a young woman in a restaurant delivery uniform, holding insulated bags and checking a receipt, with an expression of determined professionalism despite obvious exhaustion. Her car sat in the driveway, one tire wrapped in what appeared to be duct tape and prayer. Theron opened the door. I didn't order anything. The woman, her name tag read Sarah, checked her receipt again. Nightshade residence? Order for Isabel? She looked up, and Theron found himself caught by her eyes. Brown, warm, and currently shadowed with fatigue that went bone deep. Pad thai, spring rolls, and tom yum soup? My sister ordered it. She's traveling. Oh. Sarah's shoulders slumped fractionally. I'm so sorry for the confusion. I'll take it back. Though I should tell you I was late because of a tire situation, so the food's probably not as hot as it should be. I can request a refund for you if— No. Theron surprised himself by interrupting. The order is fine. My sister has standing orders she forgot to cancel. I'll take it. Relief washed across Sarah's face. Thank you. I was worried. It's my first week with this delivery service, and I really need this job. She handed over the bags, then hesitated. Your sister tips really well. The app showed 20%, but is that right? Because that seems generous for someone who's not even here. Theron looked at this woman who was working at 2 a.m, driving on a duct-taped tire, worried about doing a good job for a customer who'd forgotten to cancel an order. Something in her careful professionalism, despite her exhaustion, reminded him of himself centuries ago. Young, struggling, trying to maintain dignity in difficult circumstances. Wait here, he said. He returned with $500 in cash. Sarah stared at the bills like they might bite her. Sir, that's way too much. The order was $43. You're working at 2 a.m. on a damaged tire. Consider it compensation for the inconvenience. But I can't— Her voice cracked slightly. This is more than I make in 2 full days. Then perhaps you can take a day off. Fix your car properly. Theron kept his tone gentle, aware that pride could make kindness feel like pity. My sister would have tipped generously. I'm simply maintaining her standards. Sarah looked at the money, then at him, then back at the money. Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted it. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea what this means. My student loans, my mother's medical bills. She stopped, clearly fighting tears. I'm sorry. I shouldn't dump my problems on customers. Thank you. Really, thank you. She left quickly, probably to prevent herself from crying in a stranger's doorway. Theron watched her car navigate down the long driveway, duct-taped tire wobbling but holding. Something about the encounter lingered in his mind long after she'd gone. Her determination, her gratitude, the weight she carried with such quiet strength. He brought the food to the kitchen, opened the containers, and found himself describing them aloud to the empty room. Still warm, actually. The spring rolls traveled well. The pad thai is slightly congealed, but would reheat perfectly. The tom yum soup maintained its temperature. Good insulation in the bag. He boxed everything up carefully for the morning donation run. The mansion felt very quiet. The next night, Theron sat in his study and told himself he was not thinking about the delivery driver. He was working, reviewing territory maps, responding to emails about feeding protocols. Definitely not wondering if Sarah had gotten her tire fixed, if the money had helped, if she was working herself to exhaustion again tonight. At 1:45 a.m., he opened the delivery app. It was research, he told himself. Simple curiosity about modern food delivery systems. He certainly wasn't searching for a specific restaurant, selecting items his sister usually ordered and typing in the special instructions box. Please send Sarah if available. The order confirmed. Estimated delivery time, 2:15 a.m. Theron changed clothes. His usual formal attire seemed excessive for accepting takeout, and tried not to calculate how many times he'd checked the doorway camera in the past 30 minutes. When headlights finally swept across the driveway, he was absolutely not relieved to see the same vehicle, though the duct-taped tire had been replaced with a proper one. He opened the door before Sarah could ring the bell. She looked less exhausted tonight, her smile genuine when she saw him. Mr. Nightshade, your order. Then, with a slight conspiratorial tone, I got the note requesting me specifically. I hope the service last night was okay? It was perfect. I see you fixed your tire. Because of you. She handed over the bag, and he noticed her hands didn't tremble tonight. I wanted to say thank you again. That money, it cleared 3 months of catch-up payments. My car is safe. I'm safe because you were kind. Theron accepted the food, suddenly aware that he should have prepared what to say next. I'm glad I could help, though I confess, I ordered tonight partially to ensure you were all right. That's incredibly sweet. Sarah glanced at the bag. Though I should warn you, pad thai 3 nights in a row might get boring. My sister is the pad thai enthusiast. I'm simply maintaining her orders while she travels. Where'd she go? Prague. Business conference. He paused. This might seem unusual, but would you like to come in? Let me verify the order is correct before you leave. Last time, the soup container was slightly damaged in transit. It was a transparent excuse, and they both knew it. Sarah's smile acknowledged this. Sure, quality control is important. She followed him to the kitchen, her gaze tracking across the mansion's interior with open curiosity. This place is incredible. How long have you lived here? Approximately 200 years. At her startled look, he amended quickly. Family estate, passed down through generations. I'm just the current caretaker. Sarah watched him open containers, and Theron found himself describing the food again, but this time to someone who could actually eat it. The spring rolls are perfectly crispy. The pad thai has good wok heat. The soup... He paused, noticing a crack in the container. Ah, see? Slight leak. I'll report that to the restaurant. They'll probably remake it for you. No need, it's still perfectly good. He looked at her directly. Would you like some? You're working late, you should eat. Sarah hesitated, clearly weighing professionalism against hunger and curiosity. Curiosity won. If you're sure? I actually haven't eaten since lunch. Theron plated the food. He'd learned to handle human meals gracefully over centuries, and watched Sarah take her first bite. Her expression transformed, eyes closing briefly in satisfaction. Oh, that's good. Really good. Tell me about it. What makes it good? She looked at him curiously. You haven't tried it? Severe dietary restrictions. I can only experience food through description. It was true enough. So please, describe it for me. Sarah considered this request, then leaned into it with endearing seriousness. Okay. The noodles are chewy, not mushy. There's this sweet, sour, savory thing happening with the sauce. The peanuts add crunch. The lime gives it brightness. And there's a little chili heat that builds. She took another bite. It's comforting. Like someone spent time making sure every flavor balanced. Theron listened to her describe the meal with the same attention he'd once given to peace treaties, and realized he was smiling. You're very articulate about food. Nursing school trained me to be precise, and I really, really like food. She grinned. What's your sister's conference about, if you don't mind my asking? Territorial boundary disputes and ethical resource management. All true, if strategically vague. Sounds intense. She finds it tedious, but someone has to attend. They talked for 20 minutes about her nursing program, her mother's recovery from illness, her dream of working in an ER. Theron found himself genuinely engaged, asking questions, sharing carefully edited stories from his own past, reframed as family history. When Sarah finally checked the time and gasped at how late it had gotten, he walked her to the door and handed her $300. Mr. Nightshade, you already tipped me $500 yesterday. Your time is valuable. You spent 20 minutes here. Talking to you. That wasn't work. Then consider it compensation for excellent food description. He smiled. Same time tomorrow? Sarah looked at the money, then at him, something shifting in her expression. You're going to order again tomorrow? If that's acceptable. It's your money, but... She paused. Are you sure you're not just doing this to help me? Because if you are, that's kind, but also kind of patronizing. Theron appreciated her directness. I'm ordering because I enjoyed your company. The fact that it also helps you is simply a fortunate coincidence. She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, same time tomorrow. But you're going to run out of Thai food variations eventually. Then we'll find other cuisines to explore. After she left, Theron returned to his study and accomplished absolutely nothing for the rest of the night. Instead, he found himself replaying their conversation, the way she'd described the food with such attention, her laugh when he'd made a dry observation about territorial disputes. It had been decades since he'd enjoyed someone's company quite so thoroughly. He ordered food every night for the next 3 weeks, sometimes Thai, sometimes Vietnamese, occasionally Italian or Indian, always requesting Sarah, always inviting her in to verify the order, always finding reasons to extend their conversations. They talked about everything, her nursing clinicals, his supposed family business in import-export, her favorite books, his carefully curated stories from historical periods he'd actually lived through but presented as family lore. He continued Isabel's practice of donating the untouched food to local shelters each morning, the boxes of pristine takeout picked up by a regular driver who'd long stopped asking questions. On night 7, Sarah arrived and announced her student loans were paid off. A scholarship program had contacted her out of nowhere. On night 12, she'd caught up on her mother's medical bills. By night 17, she confessed she was working these delivery shifts because she looked forward to them, not because she needed the money anymore. I could stop accepting the food orders, Theron offered, though the thought made him feel strangely hollow. Do you want to stop? No. Then don't. She smiled over her mango sticky rice. These are the best parts of my week. You're interesting and mysterious, and you ask questions like you actually care about the answers. I do care. I know. That's what makes it nice. On night 21, Isabel returned home, jet-lagged and grumpy from 3 weeks of vampire political theater. She dropped her bags in the foyer and immediately headed for Theron's study, where she found him reviewing the delivery app like it contained state secrets. I missed you too, brother dear, she said dryly. Theron looked up, genuinely pleased to see her. Welcome back. How was Prague? Tedious beyond measure. How was maintaining the estate? She glanced at his computer screen. And why? Are you looking at food delivery apps? No reason. Isabel's eyes narrowed with predatory interest. She crossed to his desk, looked at the screen, then opened the order history before he could stop her. Her expression transformed into pure delight. 21 consecutive nights of food delivery? 17 different Thai meals, Vietnamese 4 times, and… She scrolled further, grinning wider. All requested the same driver. Please send Sarah if available. Total spending, $9,400. I can explain. Oh, please do. This is already the most interesting thing that's happened all month. Theron closed the laptop with as much dignity as he could muster. Your standing orders were active when you left. The first delivery arrived. The driver was having car trouble. I helped financially. Subsequent orders were simply ensuring she was all right. 21 times. She's working very hard to pay off debts. I appreciated her dedication. Isabel's smile could have lit the entire mansion. You're courting a human. I am doing no such thing. I merely ordered food with professional consistency. You spent over $9,000 on food you cannot eat to see a delivery driver 21 times. Isabel sat on the edge of his desk. Brother, you are courting a human and doing it in the most elaborate, inefficient, adorably awkward way possible. Your assessment is incorrect. Does she know you're a vampire? The topic has not arisen. Does she know you're interested in her? Theron hesitated. We have pleasant conversations. Oh, you're completely gone for her. Isabel laughed, delighted. This is wonderful. After 800 years of your dignified solitude, you've fallen for someone, and your courtship strategy is pretending to have an obsessive Thai food addiction. I have not fallen for anyone. I simply enjoy… He stopped, realizing any ending to that sentence would prove her point. Isabel's expression softened. Hey, I'm teasing, but I'm also genuinely happy. You deserve connection. But you should probably tell her you're interested before she thinks. You're just a really generous weirdo with dietary restrictions. I am a really generous weirdo with dietary restrictions. Who wants to court her properly, right? Theron looked at his sister, this person who'd known him for over 3 centuries, who could read him better than any treaty he'd ever negotiated. Perhaps, if I knew how modern courtship functioned. Lucky for you, I'm an expert in human romantic conventions. Isabel pulled out her phone. We're going to fix this, but first, you need to actually ask her on a date, instead of just ordering food you can't eat as an excuse to talk to her. That seems terrifyingly direct. That's how humans do it. They're mortal. They don't have time for elaborate multi-year courtship rituals. She started typing. When's your next food order scheduled? 2 a.m. tonight. Perfect. Here's what we're going to do. 3 hours later, Theron stood in his mansion's entrance hall, surrounded by flowers. Isabel had transformed the space into something between a garden and a ballroom, with candles flickering in hurricane glasses and music playing from hidden speakers. Jazz from the 1940s, because Isabel claimed it was romantic but not too modern. "The sweater is wrong," Isabel said, circling him critically. "Too formal." "This is the casual option you selected." "That was before I realized it's from 1987. Nobody wants to be romanced by someone dressed like a relic from 3 decades ago." She disappeared and returned with a different sweater, this one mercifully simpler. "There, perfect. Now remember, be honest, be direct, and for the love of all that's sacred, do not discuss vampire territorial politics." "I never discuss vampire territorial politics." "You brought up the 1846 Treaty of Vienna during our last family dinner. That was relevant to the conversation about—" He stopped. Point taken. The doorbell rang. Isabel squeezed his shoulder. "You'll be wonderful. Just tell her the truth about your feelings. Well, not the whole truth. Save the vampire revelation for at least date 3. She vanished with supernatural speed, leaving Theron alone with his nervousness and approximately $400 worth of flowers. He opened the door. Sarah stood holding his food order, her expression transforming from professional to confused to amazed as she took in the scene behind him. Mr. Nightshade? Did I interrupt something?" "No, this is—" Theron realized he was blocking the doorway and stepped aside. "This is for you, if you'd like to come in." She entered slowly, turning in a circle to take in the flowers, the candles, the music. "This is for me? Why?" "Because I wish to court you properly." The formal phrasing emerged before he could stop it. Theron cleared his throat. "I apologize. I have not courted anyone in approximately 800 years, and I'm uncertain of modern conventions, but my sister assured me that flowers and music were appropriate, though she also said this sweater is from a more recent era than my usual attire, which apparently matters, so perhaps her advice is suspect. The essential point is that I find your company valuable and would like to continue seeing you in a context beyond food delivery, if that's acceptable to you." Sarah stared at him. Then she started laughing, not mockery, but genuine delight. "You could have just asked me to coffee, or dinner, or literally anything less elaborate than this." She gestured at the transformed entrance hall. "But this is possibly the sweetest thing anyone's ever done for me. Yes, I would love to date you." "Truly?" "Truly. Though I should warn you, I'm kind of a mess. Student debt that's mysteriously disappearing, family obligations, working weird hours, and my idea of a fancy date is anywhere with tablecloths." She smiled. "But if you're interested in that mess, then yes. Absolutely yes." Theron felt something unfamiliar and wonderful unfold in his chest. Relief, joy, hope. "I find your particular mess entirely appealing. Though I should confess, the food orders were largely pretense to see you." "I know. Nobody needs that much pad thai." She set down the delivery bag. "So, what now? Do we eat this very nice Thai food surrounded by these very excessive flowers?" "If you'd like. Though I should mention, my dietary restrictions prevent me from actually eating." "Right, the mysterious restrictions you never explain." Sarah studied him with open curiosity. "Is it medical? Religious? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." "It's complicated, but I promise to explain eventually." Theron gestured toward the dining room. "For now, would you like dinner? I make an excellent conversationalist, even if I cannot join you in the meal." They sat in the dining room, where Isabel had continued her decorating frenzy. More candles, more flowers, place settings that looked like they belonged in a period drama. Sarah ate while Theron watched, listening to her describe the food with the attention and detail he'd come to anticipate. They talked until 3:30 a.m., and when Sarah finally said she needed to get home before her early class, Theron walked her to her car, feeling lighter than he had in decades. "Same time tomorrow?" Sarah asked. "I was thinking perhaps an earlier hour. There's a museum in the city that offers private after-hours tours. 9 p.m.? You want to go to a museum for our first official date? Unless you'd prefer something else. I'm flexible about activities. Less flexible about timing. I'm most active during evening hours." Sarah's expression turned thoughtful. "You know what? A museum sounds perfect. But fair warning, I'm going to ask you a million questions about everything. I'm very annoying in museums." "I look forward to it." She drove away, and Theron returned inside to find Isabel sitting on the stairs, grinning like she'd just won a particularly satisfying political argument. "So, how'd it go?" She said yes. Obviously she said yes. She's been in love with you since approximately night 5. I could tell. At his startled look, Isabel laughed. "The point is, you're dating a human. This is going to be complicated." "I'm aware. But also potentially wonderful." "Also aware." Isabel stood, kissed his cheek. "Good. Now get some rest. You have a museum date to prepare for. And knowing you, you'll want to memorize the entire collection beforehand." She was right. Theron spent the next day researching the museum's holdings, planning routes that would avoid the few remaining daylight hours, and definitely not feeling nervous about seeing Sarah in a context that wasn't food delivery. He failed spectacularly at that last part. At precisely 9 p.m., he met Sarah at the museum's side entrance, where he'd arranged private access. She arrived in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back, looking beautiful in a way that made his chest ache with something he hadn't felt in centuries. Want. Hope. The terrifying possibility of happiness. "Ready for your private tour?" He offered his arm. She took it, smiling. "This is incredibly fancy. Do you always rent out entire museums for first dates?" "Only when I want to impress someone." "It's working." They wandered through galleries, Sarah asking questions about every piece while Theron provided answers drawn from both museum placards and actual historical memory. When she stopped before a Renaissance painting of a nighttime garden scene, he found himself saying, "The artist captured the moonlight correctly. That particular quality of silver blue. It's rare to see it rendered so accurately." "You sound like you've seen it in person." "Family estate in Italy. Similar gardens." The lie came easily, smoothed by centuries of practice. "My ancestors were collectors." "Must be nice, having that kind of history." "Sometimes. Other times it's simply weight." He looked at her profile, gilded by the gallery's careful lighting. "May I ask you something potentially intrusive?" "Sure." "Why nursing? You've mentioned it several times, but never why." Sarah was quiet for a moment, still looking at the painting. "My mom got sick when I was 19. Cancer. The nurses who cared for her, they weren't just medically competent, they were kind. They saw her as a person, not just a patient. They saw me as a daughter, not just a visitor." She turned to face him. "I wanted to be that for other people. To be the person who remembers to ask about someone's cat, or knows they hate grape-flavored medicine, or notices when they're scared even if they're trying to hide it." "That's remarkably noble." "It's remarkably exhausting," she corrected, but smiled. "But yeah, it feels right. Like I'm supposed to do this." They continued through the galleries, and Theron found himself sharing more than he'd intended. Stories from his past edited to sound like family history, observations about art and culture that revealed perhaps too much knowledge for someone who claimed to be merely a collector's descendant. Sarah listened with complete attention, asking follow-up questions that showed she was actually thinking about his answers. At midnight, they sat in the museum's sculpture garden, surrounded by bronze figures frozen in various poses of motion or contemplation. Sarah leaned back on the bench, looking up at the stars. I could get used to this. Secret museum tours, private gardens, conversations that feel like they actually matter. She glanced at him. You're different from anyone I've ever met. Is that positive or concerning? Both, maybe. You're incredibly formal, kind of old-fashioned in a sweet way, and you seem to know everything about history and art. But you're also generous and thoughtful, and you actually listen when I talk. She paused. And you never meet during the day, only evenings and nights. Theron's chest tightened. The photosensitivity condition I mentioned. Right, the one that makes sunlight lethal. She said it gently, without judgment. That must be incredibly limiting. I've adapted. 800 years provides substantial adaptation time. He realized his mistake immediately. Sarah sat up. 800 years? You said that when we first met, too. Is that family history or family estate, passed through many generations? Theron redirected smoothly. Would you like to see the modern art wing? There's a fascinating installation about light and shadow. She let him change the subject, but her expression suggested she was filing away inconsistencies for future examination. They spent another hour in the museum before Theron walked her to her car, hyper-aware that he wanted to kiss her, and equally aware that proper courtship, even modern courtship, probably required more than one date before such gestures. This was amazing, Sarah said at her car. Thank you. The pleasure was entirely mine. Would you like to do this again? Definitely, but maybe something less elaborate. I don't need private museums. I just need you. Something in Theron's chest cracked open at her words. Tomorrow night, there's a rooftop garden in the city. Public, entirely non-exclusive but beautiful under stars. Perfect. They stood in the museum parking lot, neither quite wanting to leave. Finally, Sarah laughed. Okay, I'm going to go before this turns into one of those awkward, should we kiss or not moments. But for the record, I would not have objected. Noted for future reference. She drove away, and Theron remained in the parking lot longer than strictly necessary, feeling like a foolish young man despite his 8 centuries of existence. When he finally returned home, Isabel was waiting, with raised eyebrows and a knowing smile. Good date? Exceptional date. When are you going to tell her the truth? Eventually, when the moment is right. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. Trust me on this. But Theron couldn't imagine how to have that conversation. How to tell someone that the person they were dating was undead, immortal, and required blood to survive. How to explain that the future she might envision, daylight picnics, aging together, a normal life, was impossible with him. So he didn't tell her. Not the next night at the rooftop garden, nor the night after that at a private screening of classic films, nor during the midnight walks through the city's botanical gardens. They fell into a pattern. Evenings together, always after sunset, always ending before dawn. Sarah stopped questioning his unusual schedule and dietary restrictions, seeming content to enjoy their time together without demanding explanations. 6 weeks passed, in a blur of stolen nights and deepening connection. Theron introduced her to his favorite places: a bookstore that stayed open late, a jazz club in the warehouse district, the observation deck of the city's tallest building. Sarah showed him her world, the hospital where she did her final year clinicals, the coffee shop where she studied for her upcoming nursing boards, her small apartment decorated with thrift store finds and nursing textbooks. Isabel, watching this unfold, grew increasingly concerned. You're falling deeper, and she still doesn't know what you are. I'm aware. That's going to be a problem. I'm aware of that, too. So when, I don't know. Theron's control finally cracked. I don't know how to tell her. Every day that passes makes it worse, but every day I think perhaps one more night won't hurt. Perhaps I can have one more evening of her looking at me like I'm simply a man instead of a monster. Isabel's expression softened. She's not going to think you're a monster. You don't know that. Neither do you. But you owe her the truth before this goes any further. Theron knew his sister was right. The lies, even lies of omission, were accumulating into something that would eventually collapse under its own weight. But he was afraid. After 800 years of emotional distance, he'd finally found someone who made him feel alive, and the thought of losing her felt unbearable. The crisis came on a Saturday afternoon when Sarah texted asking if they could meet for lunch. Theron stared at his phone, this impossible request, and finally typed back, "I'm not available during daylight hours. Evening would be better." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "We need to talk." They met at the rooftop garden at 9 p.m., their usual spot, but the atmosphere felt different. Sarah sat on their favorite bench, and when Theron approached, her expression was troubled. "I've been doing some thinking." About? About us. About all the things that don't quite add up. She took a breath. "You only see me at night. You never eat or drink anything, not even water. Photos of you are always blurred or strangely shadowed, even in good lighting. Your stories about family history are too detailed, like you lived them instead of heard them. And yesterday, when we were at that antique shop, you picked up a music box and said, 'This is from 1654. I recognize the craftsman's mark,' like you'd seen him make it." Theron sat beside her, his centuries of careful control feeling inadequate for this moment. "What are you asking, Sarah?" "I'm asking why you can only meet at night. And don't say photosensitivity. That condition exists, but people who have it can go outside with protection. You talk about sunlight like it's genuinely lethal." She turned to face him fully. "So I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly, even though it sounds insane. Are you a vampire?" The question hung in the air between them. Theron could lie, could deflect, could use compulsion to make her forget this conversation entirely. But Isabel's words echoed in his mind. She deserves the truth. "If I say yes, will you run?" Sarah's breath caught. "Oh my God, I was joking. Well, half joking. But you're serious?" "Completely serious. I'm 847 years old. I was turned in 1178. I rule the Eastern Vampire Territories. My dietary restrictions are because I require blood to survive. My schedule is because sunlight is genuinely, immediately lethal to my kind." He kept his voice steady, matter of fact. "And every word I've said to you about my feelings has been completely, absolutely true. I have never used compulsion on you, never influenced your thoughts or emotions. Every conversation, every moment we've shared has been real." Sarah stood up, paced to the garden's edge, paced back. "Vampires are real?" "Yes." "You're a vampire?" "Yes." "And you've been dating me without mentioning this because—" "Because I'm a coward." Theron remained seated, giving her space. "Because I wanted more time before you looked at me with fear instead of—" He stopped. "I should have told you immediately. I was wrong to wait." "You were wrong to wait," Sarah agreed, her voice shaking. I can't. I need you to prove it. Show me, something definitive." Theron stood slowly, moved to where she could see him clearly in the moonlight. "You're certain?" "Yes." He let the control slip, let his eyes shift to their true crimson, let his fangs extend, allowed the otherness that he kept carefully hidden to manifest fully. He looked exactly like what he was, a predator, beautiful and deadly, fundamentally not human. Sarah stumbled backward, hand over her mouth. Oh God. Oh God. Theron immediately returned to his human appearance, every instinct screaming at him to go to her, but knowing he needed to let her process. I will not harm you. I have never harmed a human who didn't threaten my people first. You are safe with me. Safe? With a vampire? She laughed, slightly hysterical. The scholarship that paid off my debt, that was you, wasn't it? Yes. Because you wanted me to choose you freely, not because I needed your money. Yes. And the food orders, all 21 nights before we officially met. You were what, checking on me? Initially. Then I was courting you very inefficiently. Sarah sank onto the bench, processing. What does this mean? If I... She looked up at him. What are you asking from me, Theron? He sat beside her, carefully keeping distance. I'm asking if you're willing to try. To let me court you properly, now that you know the truth. To see if what we have is strong enough to withstand the complications of what I am. He paused. I want to be clear about what this would mean. I can never meet you in daylight. I age extremely slowly, essentially not at all. If this becomes serious, you would face a choice years from now about whether to turn, or to live your natural life while I remain as I am. There are dangers in my world, politics, territorial disputes, vampires who wouldn't approve of a human in my life. And I would understand completely if you chose to walk away right now. Can you make me forget, like in the movies? Yes, compulsion is possible. I could make you forget all of this. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. But you haven't. No. Because? Because you deserve agency. The choice to stay or go should be yours, made with full information, not because I manipulated your mind. He met her eyes. I care for you too much to take away your free will. You care for me. I'm falling in love with you, Theron corrected quietly. Against all wisdom, against 8 centuries of careful emotional distance, despite knowing it will inevitably end in heartbreak, I'm falling in love with you. Sarah made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. This is the most insane thing that's ever happened to me. Vampires exist. The man I've been dating is a vampire king. An 847-year-old vampire king who's falling in love with me. She pressed her hands to her face. I need time. I need to think. I can't process this right now. Of course, take all the time you need. Theron stood, giving her space. If you decide you want to forget, contact Isabel. She can arrange it. If you decide you want to try, he pulled out a card with his personal number. Call me. I'll answer any questions you have, introduce you to this world carefully, prove that you can trust me. And if I decide I just want to pretend this conversation never happened, and we keep dating without discussing the vampire thing, then I would respect that too. Though I recommend against it, willful ignorance rarely leads to happy outcomes. Sarah took the card, studying it. Your sister knows about us. She's known since approximately the second food delivery. She's been insufferably smug about it. That pulled a small smile from Sarah. Okay, I'm going to go home now. I'm going to probably not sleep, possibly scream into my pillow, definitely question my sanity. And then I'll decide what I want. That's entirely reasonable. She walked to the garden exit, then turned back. For the record, when you look human, I'm not afraid of you. Even knowing what you are. I'm overwhelmed and confused and processing something impossible, but I'm not afraid. After she left, Theron remained in the garden until nearly dawn, simultaneously hoping she would call and dreading it. When he finally returned home, Isabel was waiting. She knows. She knows. How'd it go? She didn't run screaming, which I'm choosing to interpret positively. Isabel pulled him into a hug. She'll call, I know her type, she's brave and curious, and she already cares about you. She just needs time to adjust to having her entire worldview expanded. Or she'll decide this is too complicated and move on with her very sensible human life. Possible, but unlikely. Isabel pulled back, looking at him seriously. Are you prepared for this? Really prepared? Because if she chooses to stay, her life will change. She'll be connected to our world. That comes with dangers and complications. I know, but she deserves the choice. Good. Now go rest. You look terrible. Theron retreated to his chambers but couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the moment Sarah had stumbled backward, the fear in her eyes when he'd shown his true nature. That image would haunt him, regardless of what she decided. 3 days passed with no word. Theron functioned on autopilot, attending to territorial business, responding to council communications, maintaining his usual routines. But every time his phone buzzed, his heart, which barely beat anymore, seemed to lurch. On the 4th night, a text arrived. Can we talk? In person? They met at the rooftop garden again. Sarah arrived with a notebook full of questions, and Theron spent 4 hours answering everything. How did vampires feed? Blood banks and compensated willing donors. Were there other supernatural creatures? Some. How did vampire politics work? Territorial systems with elected councils. Could he turn people easily? Yes, but it required explicit consent and was heavily regulated. Did he kill people? Not in over 200 years. He'd evolved past that necessity. What about you and me? Sarah finally asked. If I choose to try this, what does that actually look like? Theron considered his answer carefully. It means we continue dating at your pace. I introduce you to my world gradually, starting with Isabel, eventually meeting individual council members if things become serious. You keep your career, your life, your independence. In a few years, if we're still together, you would face a choice about turning. But that decision would be entirely yours, made with full information and no pressure from me. And if I choose not to turn? Then I cherish every moment of your human life and eventually say goodbye when that life ends naturally. The thought made him ache. I won't lie, that would be devastatingly painful for me. But it would be your right. Sarah was quiet, processing. I spent 3 days researching, reading everything I could find about vampires, folklore, fiction, supposed fact. Most of it is nonsense, I assume. Mostly, we're not demonic. Holy objects don't harm us. We can own property, hold jobs, live relatively normal lives. We simply require blood to survive and sunlight to avoid. And you've been alive for over 800 years. Yes. I can't even imagine what that's like. The things you've seen, the people you've lost. It's why most of my kind maintain emotional distance. Caring for mortals inevitably ends in grief. He looked at her directly. But I've decided you're worth that risk. That's a lot of pressure. It's not meant to be. I'm simply being honest about my feelings. Sarah closed her notebook. I have one more question, and I need you to answer completely honestly. Is there any danger to me? From you specifically, or from your world? From me? Only if I lost control completely, which hasn't happened in centuries. From my world? Potentially. Some vampires view humans as inferior or dangerous. If our relationship became known, there would be political complications. I would protect you, but I can't guarantee your safety absolutely. But you think the risk is manageable? I do, but I'm also incredibly biased. Sarah smiled slightly. Okay, here's my answer. I want to try. This is terrifying and completely insane, but I like you too much to walk away just because you happen to be a supernatural creature. She opened her notebook again. But I have conditions. Of course. 1. You never use compulsion on me, ever. Not even if you think it's for my own good. Agreed without hesitation. 2. I finish nursing school and start my career. This doesn't become my whole life. Absolutely, I would never ask you to give up your calling. 3. We take this slow, human-paced slow. I need time to adjust. Whatever pace you're comfortable with. And 4. You're completely honest with me from now on. No more strategic omissions or edited stories. Theron nodded. I can do that. Though fair warning, 800 years of history includes some disturbing content. I'm a nursing student. I can handle disturbing. She stood, and Theron stood with her. So, we're really doing this? If you're willing. Sarah stepped closer, and Theron's breath caught, an unnecessary gesture that lingered from mortality. She reached up, touched his face gently. You're really a vampire. I really am. And you're really falling in love with me? Hopelessly. She kissed him then, and Theron felt the 8 centuries of careful emotional control completely disintegrate. He kissed her back with all the tenderness and hope and terrifying vulnerability he'd been suppressing, and when they finally pulled apart, Sarah was smiling. Okay, this is happening. I'm dating a vampire king. My life has become completely surreal. Is that acceptable? It's better than acceptable, it's kind of amazing. She took his hand. Though we should probably figure out how to explain you to my friends. The photosensitivity excuse is wearing thin. We'll work something out. They stayed in the garden until nearly dawn, talking through logistics and future plans, and when Sarah finally left, Theron felt lighter than he had in centuries. Hopeful. Terrified. Completely, utterly in love. The next 6 months unfolded like a dream Theron hadn't known he was allowed to have. Sarah integrated into his world with remarkable grace, meeting Isabel with genuine warmth despite the strangeness of the situation. She met several council members individually over carefully arranged dinners, impressing them with her questions and composure. She learned vampire history, politics, and culture with the same focused attention she brought to her nursing studies. Theron, meanwhile, integrated into her world. He met her friends at carefully timed evening gatherings, presenting himself as a businessman with unfortunate light sensitivity. He funded a free clinic in her mother's name, supporting Sarah's desire to help underserved communities. He attended her nursing school graduation ceremony, sitting in the back where the evening lighting was dimmer, watching her accept her degree with fierce pride. She passed her boards and started working night shift in the ER, perfect for their schedule, and came home to him with stories about patients and medical emergencies. Theron listened with the same attention he'd given to territorial disputes, asking questions, celebrating her victories, commiserating with her losses. A year to the day after their first official date, Theron brought Sarah to the rooftop garden where everything had changed. The space was transformed again, not with excessive flowers this time, but with simple strings of lights and a table set for one. Dinner? Sarah asked, smiling. For you. I'll provide conversation and company. They sat, and Sarah ate while Theron watched with affection that had only deepened over 12 months of shared life. When she finished, he stood, pulled a small box from his pocket, and knelt beside her chair. Serafina Hayes. I have lived for 847 years, and in all that time, I have never felt as alive as I do when I'm with you. You make me want to be better, braver, more connected to the world. You've shown me that love isn't a weakness to guard against, but a strength to embrace. He opened the box, revealing an antique sapphire ring that had belonged to his mother, crafted in 1165 when his family had been at the height of their influence. I want forever with you, however you choose to define that. Whether you turn or live your human life, while I cherish every moment, I want you to be mine, and I want to be yours. Will you marry me? Sarah looked at the ring, then at him, and laughed through happy tears. Yes, obviously yes, but on one condition. Anything. When we get married, Isabel is not allowed to order $10,000 worth of wedding cake that nobody can eat. Theron laughed genuinely, standing to slip the ring on her finger. I'll speak with her, though I make no promises about her restraint. They kissed in the garden surrounded by lights, and Theron felt the weight of 8 centuries settle into something that felt remarkably like peace. 2 years later, Sarah worked night shift at the hospital Theron had anonymously funded, a state-of-the-art facility that served the city's most vulnerable populations. She'd built a reputation as the nurse who always remembered patient details, who fought for her patients, who brought both clinical skill and genuine compassion to her work. They'd married in a midnight ceremony that confused Sarah's human friends. Why vampire-themed? But satisfied both their worlds. Isabel had, in fact, ordered an enormous wedding cake for the aesthetic, which Sarah's human guests enjoyed while Theron looked on fondly, and Isabel documented everything with the enthusiasm of someone who'd waited 3 centuries to see her brother truly happy. Sarah had made her decision. She would turn, but not yet. 5 more years of human life, of career building and growing in her calling. Then immortality with Theron. He'd agreed immediately, understanding that she needed to feel complete in her human life before leaving it behind. On a Sunday evening, the same rooftop garden where Theron had proposed, they met at the edge of dawn. Sarah had just finished a 12-hour shift where she'd saved a child's life through quick thinking and skilled intervention. She'd come directly from the hospital, still in scrubs, exhausted and exhilarated. Theron had spent the night resolving a territorial dispute between vampire factions, 6 hours of careful negotiation that had prevented conflict. He met her at the garden with coffee for her, fond observation for him. "Tell me about your patient," he said. Sarah described the emergency, the split-second decisions, the rush of adrenaline when the child's heartbeat stabilized. Theron listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed he understood both the medical and emotional complexity. When she finished, he shared his night, the politics, the compromise, the satisfaction of preventing violence. She asked questions that showed she'd learned vampire culture deeply enough to understand the stakes. They sat together as the sky began to lighten, holding hands, talking about everything and nothing. About Sarah's upcoming shift schedule and Theron's council meetings. About the clinic's expansion plans and whether Isabel was going to survive another 3-week council summit without calling them 17 times to complain. About their future, 5 years human, then eternity together. 5 more years of this, Sarah said, gesturing to the lightening sky. You going inside while I watch the sunrise. Then forever where we never have to separate. I can wait. I've had practice. 849 years of practice? Approximately. Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, and Theron wrapped his arm around her, holding her in the gentle pre-dawn light. I love you, she said, my impossible, ancient vampire king. I love you, my extraordinary, brilliant human wife. The first rays of sun appeared on the horizon, and Theron stood with supernatural speed. I should go. I know. He kissed her gently, thoroughly, then disappeared into the building's shadow. Sarah watched him go, then turned to face the sunrise, not lonely, but content. Tonight, they would have forever again. And in 5 years, they would have it during the day, too. She sat in the garden watching the city wake, thinking about the impossible path that had led her here. A flat tire, a generous tip, 21 nights of pad thai. A vampire king who courted her through food delivery because he didn't know how else to approach someone who made him feel alive again. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. It was hers. Sarah pulled out her phone and texted, Theron, see you tonight. I'll bring dinner. You bring the conversation. His reply came immediately. Always, I love you. She smiled at her phone, at the garden, at the sunrise painting the sky in shades of gold and pink her husband could never see. But that was all right. They had the night, they had each other, and soon they would have forever. It was more than enough.